Pete Diamond here in Jacksonville, Florida, and today, I don't know if any of you have ever had this issue come up, but we're in park. The brake clutch pedal is all the way depressed, and yet, I don't know if you can hear that squeaking noise, but the problem we have right now is up under here. You may not know this, but there's actually a little brake rotor and a set of pads, and I'm suspecting that we need to adjust those to tighten up that parking brake. And the good news is it's really easy, and the first step is going to be to jack up the mower. Now, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to jack up on the transmission housing, but up under here, see this lip, there's sufficient, because it doesn't weigh very much, there's sufficient space to get the jack. Just be careful to clear that forward reverse. Just enough. All we're trying to do is get the wheels off the ground, just enough so we can get that rear wheel off. Okay, now we just got to take off the wheel. So to get the wheel off, you're going to need a 1/2 inch socket and an extension. And I'm just locking the wheel with my foot. And I'm going to have to do this off camera. If it's real tight, you can do this with the mower still sitting on the ground, but it's not too bad. So let me get that off and I'll be right back. Then it's just a question of grabbing the wheel both sides and just jiggling it till it comes off. And during that process, I was also hitting the back of the wheel and constantly jiggling it, and eventually it came off. Depending on the condition of your spindle and the wheel, you may have to get some penetrating fluid on there. But anyway, now that's out of the way, we can get to what we came for, which is this mechanism here. This is the brake rotor, and I'll reposition the camera and show you the brake system. So the way this brake system works is very simple. This lever here, when you engage the parking brake all the way to the floor, that lever pulls forward and it basically puts pressure that way on the brake pad. So this is actually the brake caliper, and there's a little brake pad in there, and the adjustment for it is to tighten up this nut here. So you would just tighten this up a couple of turns. So these are the two retaining bolts that would allow you to get the caliper off if you needed to put a new pad in it. But I think all I'm going to need to do is just tighten this a couple of turns, and the way you do that is you engage the parking brake, and then you give this a couple of tightens, and then you disengage the brake and make sure that the wheels still turn. Now, you don't need to take the tire off to do this. I just was shooting the video and I wanted to have better access, but you're going to need basically the tire back on and the mower sitting on the ground, because you're going to do the push-pull test once you've adjusted the brakes to make sure that you didn't over tighten it. So I'm going to put the wheel back on and get to adjusting the brakes. So before I go ahead and throw that wheel back on, I'm just going to clean this shaft up. A little bit of there we go. And I'm going to put just a little touch of grease on there too. You'll notice that the end of the shaft is keyed, and that's just fit the wheel. So as you put the wheel on, just be mindful of that's going to have to go down into the inset in the wheel. So I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but it's better to line the wheel up with the square size of that shaft before you try to get it on, and then it slides right on. Put the bolt back in, and again, you don't need to do this just to adjust the brakes. I don't think you should be able to access the bolt on that caliper without taking the wheel off. And again, just tighten it up, and just put my foot under the back tire just to lock it on, and I'll snug it when it's on the ground. Okay, let's get it off the jack. As you can see, the bolt is quite accessible with the wheel in place. So now all we're going to do is put it in park and put a quarter turn on that and see if it tightens up the brakes. Okay, that's the brakes back on. You can hear it. I don't know if you can hear that squeak, but all we're going to do now is, and it's this 1/2 inch socket again, we're just going to get that on there, and that's a quarter turn. I think that's it. Let's take the brakes off. Rolls perfectly. Brakes back on. I think we're going to give it a little bit more. It's another quarter turn. Still rolls super smooth. Brakes back on. That's it. Yep, rock solid. So if this is you, it's as easy as just getting a 1/2 inch ratchet, putting it on that center nut, engage the brakes, and if the mower's moving freely, even if it's just dragging a little bit, just give it a 1/4 turn with the brakes engaged, release the brakes, check that you didn't tighten it up too much, and then repeat the process as needed, so that when the brakes engaged, the mower doesn't move, and when the brakes disengaged, it moves freely. So now the only other thing I can say is there is the potential that your brake pad will be worn out. They're like $6, $7, $8, $9. You can buy them online. I'll put a link to one in the description down below. It's not like a car though, where your brakes wear out frequently, so it's unlikely that you're going to need to put a new brake pad in. But in case you do, it's a pretty straightforward process. Just removing the springs and these 2 bolts here. There are other videos on YouTube about how to change the brakes on your riding lawnmower. I'm just posting this because I just had to do it on mine. So anyway, Pete Diamond, Jacksonville, Florida. Thanks for watching.